Hello and welcome to 10 Things You Don't Know About Schema Markup. My name is Martha van Berkel and I'm the CEO at Schema App, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here at State of Search. I like to introduce myself with my knowledge graph because it explains in a beautiful, connected way how I'm related to other things in the world, starting with the fact that I'm an alumni of Cisco. I spent 14 years there. I also have a technical degree in mathematics and engineering. I also got the chance to attend MIT. I'm one of the co-founders of Schema App. I'm a proud Canadian, and I used to own an Austin Healey Sprite. Now, some cool fact about my Austin Healey Sprite is that my actual car starred in a movie called Losing Chase, which was directed by Kevin Bacon. And so, yes, I am 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Actually, Kevin Bacon's ass, but don't say anything. And so now you can figure out that you're actually 3 degrees from Kevin Bacon. And you inferred that because you now know the relationship between me and Kevin Bacon. And that inferencing is exactly what Google's doing when you put schema markup on your site and explain how things are connected together. And so today we're going to delve into some tips that you can run with regards to schema markup on your site. Now, I'll interchange the words schema markup and structured data throughout this presentation. And for those of you that are just learning about this super awesome nerdy area of technical SEO, schema markup really helps the search engines understand the content, but it also actually helps you really make an impression or stand out in the search results. And Google even said almost 2 years ago now that they're using schema markup in order to help you show up across different types of platforms. So not just on web search, but on mobile, on Google Assistant, etc. Now, most of you will know schema markup because it drives rich results. And rich results are everything from that star and price for products. And then these are some of the new ones that have been recently announced. So the first column here is around home activities. So if there's a business that you're working with that is trying to show up and really take advantage of the fact that more people are spending time at home, the home activities rich result is a great way to show up through these mobile primarily based searches. The second rich result here is actually an example you can see in that bottom part here, that licensable tag on the image. So it's actually called image license rich result. And this is where you can actually use the schema markup to explain how an image can be used or licensed and sort of what the permission is for using that license. And it just came out of beta. And then the third one, which is our newest one, which is around shipping options. So in addition to getting price and ratings for products, you can now kind of illustrate what the shipping cost is. And so here you can see it's illustrating free shipping. And this is currently only in the US on mobile. But rich results are really how you make that, really big impression in search. And it's driven entirely by schema markup. Now, the schema markup process starts with strategy. So the strategy is figuring out sort of what you should optimize and what is it really that you're talking about and trying to explain. And then once you know what it is, you can author it. So that's like creating the schema markup or JSON-LD, getting it onto your website, which is deployment, and then maintenance, which is that tweaking. So whether your content's changing or whether you're going after a new rich result or adding rich results to old content, that maintenance is the process of sort of making sure you're cultivating new opportunities within the site in order to stand out in search. And then reporting and analytics is measuring that value and ROI, which often then informs back to strategy. And then you do it all over again. It really is an iterative process. One of the things that we love about schema.org and schema markup is that as you dig into this and get better at it, you can often find opportunities out of the vocabulary and out of the features from Google that might inform additional content that you want to put on the site. And so you can really almost say that the schema markup is informing your content strategy. So at Schema App, we specialize entirely in schema markup. It's what we do all day, every day. And we have amazing solutions to help whether your agency or your in-house team be able to do schema markup at scale and really get into some of the nerdy concepts that I'm going to cover today. And so if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me. We work with SEOs around the world on all different size of brands, on all different CMSs. And we just absolutely, totally love doing schema markup all day, every day. Well, enough about me. Let's jump into our top 10. So these are 10 things that I would say most people don't know about schema markup, so I'll be interested in the Q&A to find out which one of these weren't sort of a news flash. But my intent is that you'll learn something new and a tactic or tactics that you can go and apply back home as you sort of wrap up here. So the first thing is around Wikidata. So our recommendation is that you should use Wikidata to define concepts. And the Wikidata definitions are really sort of helping be truly explicit about it. Now, we've just had a debate internally at Schema App that was just like, well, what about Google's knowledge graph or what about Wikipedia? So those are also good, but we find that Wikidata has the broadest definitions that can be applied across any industry and anything. Let me show you some examples. So if we were trying to optimize the City of Dallas homepage and we are calling out, what it is, it's a city, we might want to use same as property in order to link it to the Wikidata. So we're being absolutely clear as to exactly what it is. Now, have a look at this URL. If you see a Q, in the definition of what you're linking to, it really references that you're using Wikidata. And what I like about it is that where Wikipedia and others have, I'll say language definitions, so this is the definition of Dallas in English or in French or in Italian, this is like just the definition of Dallas. This is like the node within the Wikidata knowledge graph that's describing exactly what Dallas is. Another example, if you were trying to optimize an article about the Toronto Maple Leafs latest player, Joe Thornton, who's going to help us win the Stanley Cup. Sorry, Dallas Star fans. You could use about. And again, Joe Thornton is in Wikidata. So if you had any questions about sort of it being comprehensive, boom shakalaka, done. Or if, let's say, you're trying to optimize a case study on your site. So this is one of our case studies, and you wanted to mention, who is mentioned in the article. So here, I'm saying it's mentioning SAP as a company. Again, Wikidata for the home run. Again, any of these examples that I've shown, you could also use a Wikipedia article or a Google Knowledge Graph link as well. All right, number 2, GitHub. Now, GitHub is this like awesome place where schema.org ventures and people come together to talk about how we are going to evolve the schema.org vocabulary. And it's currently on release 10. And it's also a really great place to find out additional information about who's talking about these new properties or who's helping influence the evolution of the product schema markup. And so if you go to github.com, schema.org, you can actually start to see some of these conversations. The other way that you can get to it is if you go to schema.org and go under the releases or this link here, and then anything that you want to click on that's an issue actually takes you back to GitHub. And so here's an example that was in the release 10 that just came out. And it's interesting. It's a proposal to add a few types and properties to express energy efficiency of products. Interesting. I wonder who's proposing it. Well, Alex Jansen, it turns out, is from Google Shopping. The other person who's looking at is Dan Berkeley, who is the Google representative who really leads the schema.org vocabulary initiative. And you can actually go through and see the whole conversation between Dan and Alex as to why they want to do this, when they think it'll be applied, who they think will use it, which standards they'll incorporate, etc. So there you have it. Go check out GitHub. They also love, it's a community that develops this together. And so if you have a strong opinion, or perhaps you have great expertise in one area of industry, feel free to chime in, give your opinion, and perhaps make an impact on how schema.org evolves. All right, number 3, properties. So make sure we're all on the same page. Properties are the sort of parts of the schema.org that we use to describe something. So here we have a product, and the properties for product are going to be these things like additional property, aggregate rating, audience award, brand category, color, depth. And there's often up to 40 or more different properties for each of these classes and types. So if you're trying to describe something, you'd be like, but Martha, the Google, rich result only tells me that there's 3 required and 4 recommended. another big surprise, 40 plus ways to describe things. And so for products especially, I think there's really great properties in here that if you have, let's say, the width, the height, the weight, the shipping options, the license for something, go and have a look at what those properties are. There's more than just the required and recommended that Google has on here. Now, one thing that we often tell our customers though is like, don't take it as a challenge to use all the properties though, but use what's relevant on the site that's on the page. And that really helps inform the content. And it might also tell you, additional things you might want to add on. All right, next we're jumping into connected schema markup. Now, people have heard me speak before, know that this is an area I'm really, really passionate about. And part of that's because it really helps explain what is the concept you're talking about and how does it relate to other things in the business and other things in the world? Sort of like when I use my knowledge graph to introduce myself. And this really comes down to your schema markup telling the story, telling, Google and other search engines exactly what this is about. And so in this example, we have our US office and a product, and we're trying to say, how are these things related? How do we make sure that the story is clear that this product is part of this amazing company, which also has a European office, has jobs that they're hiring, etc. And so we developed a tool called Schema Paths. And Schema Paths is a tool that my co-founder Mark created because he got really tired of looking at the schema.org vocabulary, trying to figure out like how you relate things. And so what you can do here is enter two different things you want to relate. So let's say you had a page that was about this amazing product that you're building, and you wanted to be able to figure out how you connect it back to your organization so that there was some type of link there. So you'd enter those two classes, click to find class, and then we would give you ways in order to relate those. So, if the page was primarily about the organization and you wanted to link it and say, well, the organization owns the product or the organization knows about the product, well, that doesn't feel right. Like the page is about the product. And so the reversal pass, the product has a property brand. That one might work. So if the organization is, let's say the brand, let's say I'm Reebok or Nike, or any of those brands, that might be a good one. Or the product has a category, a little weaker, or the product has a property manufacturer. So if, like the organization is actually creating the product, manufacturer is the best way to relate it, which if we go back here, you can see we've defined it, the product, the manufacturer is the US office. And so a great way to connect pretty much anything. And just to illustrate that you connect anything, if let's say your webpage was about a volcano and a gas station, maybe like how the things are related, maybe, the gas station serves this volcano area, you're in Pompeii, you could actually go here and sort of put in those two things. And, the Schema Pass tool would tell you that, the volcano either contains a gas station, little explosive, it's probably the opposite, or the gas station area serves the volcano. And so really you can relate pretty much anything, challenge accepted if you find something we can't relate, through the schema.org vocabulary. All right, number 5, everyone's still with me here, multi-type entities. So let's start with just defining what an entity is. So an entity is a thing. And in schema.org terms, that means that it's a type or a class, like that product I was showing. And then the properties describe it. And so a physical entity would be a product, or an abstract entity would be something like the days of the week. Not tangible, right? So abstract. And so a multi-type entity is when something is best described by merging these two types. Let me give you some examples. So a house for sale is both a product and a single family resident. A hotel room for rent is a product and a hotel room. The comedy event on air is a comedy event and a broadcast event. A book for sale is a product and a book, and the haircut is a service and a product. And so you really want to use this when you're like trying to really describe the thing on the page, and you need that wider range of properties to do it holistically. And ideally, you can also sometimes achieve a rich result while still being honest. And so in this example, for example, a house for sale is a product with an offering and a single family residence. So this would actually get the rich result for the offering. And you can see sort of at the top, we've described both types. So it's both saying it's a type product and a single family residence. And then what's beautiful is the properties get all mushed together. So you have access to them all. So for example, you can describe, using product, all the offerings, what the asking price is, sort of, ideally linking it to the URL and at ID for where it's described. And then you also get the properties for single family residence. So in this case, we're illustrating how number of bedrooms would be really illustrative of that. So again, you're using a multi-type entity when both types and all the properties help you best describe it. Which leads me to services. So services, there was a big change that we noticed just in the last month or so. When we went to look at the product description in schema.org, we noticed that it said any offered product or service. Now, prior to this time, if you had asked me or you'd gone to the Schema app website to look up how to do schema markup for a service, we would say, absolutely use the service schema markup type. But now we can do a multi-type entity. And what's brilliant about this is that if you have an offering or if you have aggregate rating and so forth, you can now get a rich result for a service. Boom, love this. So multi-type entity for service is what we really recommend. So if you had previously marked it up as a service, add that product in. And so now you can call out the offerings tied to it. And then you can also be eligible for that rich result. So big update. Also, our how to do services has been updated with this AHA. All right, number 7, strong connectors. I've used these in some of the examples that I showed you at the beginning with Wikidata, but there's specific properties within schema.org that allow you to really illustrate sort of how things are connected or related. And so about's a very strong one. So I was telling about that article that's about, Joe Thornton, or, perhaps it's, article about schema markup. You can be very, very explicit with that, again, using Wikipedia, Wikidata, knowledge graph, or perhaps a product or a service page on your website. Mentions is a bit of a weaker association, but it's a softer sort of way to relate it. But it's mentioned in the article, or it's mentioned, on the page across any entity, people, place, or thing. Subject of is a really great one. I'll show you an example. So if you, let's say, have a page and there's the subject of an FAQ, it's a really powerful connector, and really think of it as has the different parts. So it's made up, or it has these different parts included. And so here's an advanced example of how you can start using this. So a collection page is where you can kind of pull a bunch of things together. So we could say that this group of things is about a product or a service, or if we're getting really advanced here, we could say it's a product and a service. So it's a service page. It has part of FAQ. So part of the page you can see on the left in the example is the FAQ, but it also has a how-to on it. And so here I've used those strong connectors in order to make this collection page about the product and service eligible for not just the product rich result, but also the FAQ rich result, and also the how-to rich result. Pretty advanced, pretty awesome. Speaking of nesting for rich results, I want to give you an additional example. So let's say you were me and you owned Schema app and you wanted to make sure people knew about your awesome tool called the highlighter that you want to help do schema markup at scale without having to talk to IT. And you have this product page, but because you're enterprise software, you don't put your pricing on this page. I don't have ratings specifically on it, but I do have an FAQ on it. So how do I make this page really rock for, that rich result for FAQ? So what I want to do is figure out, first of all, using my schema paths, how do I relate a product and FAQ? And so what I find out from schema paths is that I can use subject of. And so now my product page that has that FAQ with the question and answers can nest that FAQ so that I can get that rich result. And so it's a really powerful way of combining those connectors I talked about, the schema paths tool I talked about, multi-type entities all together in order to help you really maximize how many rich results you can get. Number 9, featured snippets. Now, featured snippets are really interesting. I think that, it's no longer the 0 results, it's the number 1 result. But featured snippets documentation from Google is very vague. It talks about using, intent to make sure it gets the right answer. We have love-hate relationship because sometimes you can't get that click through those featured snippets. Through Bill Slawski's articles, that also articulates through the patent that Google put in that it uses both structured and unstructured data, which could mean pretty much anything, because structured data could be schema markup or it could be a table. And then most recently, Brodie Clark, who is an SEO out of Australia, tweeted this, that check this out. There's a feature snippet that's using how-to markup in order to inform the mobile experience. And a shout out to Marie Haynes, who shared this through her search news you can use, which I'm a big fan of. And so I love this because, we're seeing sort of the schema markup play or be tested by Google sort of within the featured snippets. And then we also are seeing strong evidence that, while we can't sort of run a report on featured snippets, this is SEMrush organic research showing keyword trends for featured snippets. And we are finding often for our clients after we put in schema markup that we're seeing an increased number of top 3, illustrating that the schema markup is having a positive impact on those featured snippets. So you heard it here. Do schema markup. It'll help inform your featured snippets. And then the last thing I want to just cover was ROI beyond the rich results. And this is an area of how schema markup can be used to enhance your analytics in order to allow you to cut your data to really get insights on sort of perhaps like your content strategy, or should you invest more in ratings. And so the example I have here is where we've added the author out of our blog. So we've used our WordPress plugin in order to sort of identify the author. And then we've programmatically used Schema app to pull those authors into Google Analytics under a custom dimension. And so here you can see sort of how many sessions and bounce rates are driven by which authors. So it looks like I still need to keep writing content. But it would allow you also to then understand if you had a team of writers, which writers should write about what topics. You could add keywords as a second piece here, driven by data. And so what our customers are loving about this is that you can really sort of use the schema markup to go beyond just getting those rich results, but also to get insights from the data by sort of allowing them to cut it by different elements. So keywords, authors, all kinds of different ways. This is sometimes known as semantic analytics, or we like to call it enhanced analytics. So that's all I had to share with you today, my top 10 ways to make an impression in search using schema markup, hopefully some tactics that you can run with today. If ever you want to learn more about Schema app, feel free to come to our homepage at www.schemaapp.com, book a demo, or if you just want to get sort of more training and videos and sort of news around schema markup, you can scroll to the bottom of the page on the homepage and sign up for our newsletter, and we'd love to share all that insight and education with you. It's one of our core values. My name is Martha van Berkel. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today at State of Search, and feel free to reach out to me if I can be of value to you and your organization. Let's do questions.